We're here with Craig, continuing our series on founder success stories here in founder groups. And I managed to twist Craig's rubber arm in coming and helping us out and sharing his story. And I think everybody's going to get a lot of great nuggets of value. I've thoroughly enjoyed getting to know Craig over the past few months. But let's start off. I'm going to introduce Craig. But Craig, how about we start off with your startup? So tell us what Diversy Fund is.
Well, Ed, first, appreciate you and your time and having me on the podcast. Diversy Fund came out of the idea of kind of my upbringing and kind of a lot of the things that kind of happened through the Jobs Act of 2012. Diversy Fund imagines a world where everyone has an equal opportunity to build wealth. So we use some of the regulations from the Jobs Act to allow the everyday investor an opportunity to invest like institutional investors by leveraging technology, decreasing investment amounts to like $500, making it very product driven. You can do it all on a platform. You can do it through apps, Android, Apple today. We take those funds, we aggregate those funds, we invest it into institutional grade investment opportunities. Our first two products were multifamily REITs that we created. And we did this and started taking off. And really when the pandemic started to hit, our business started kind of accelerating. So we were fortunate to come out of those downtimes with a pretty robust business.
Yeah, a lot of times it comes down to timing for sure. But let's talk about where you are in terms of your growth and the size. So I see you join our community of 30,000 plus investors. And then how much in terms of the size or how many assets under management? What's the value of that right now?
Yeah, we're in hundreds of thousands, greater than about 500,000 account signups. Those are 30,000 people who actually invested dollars. We have about 30% of them come back again and have reinvested. We do have an auto invest option. So we're close to 8% of people are set up on a month-to-month basis where money comes out of their checking or savings account, which is a great tool, I believe, for people who are just starting out or more beginner level on the investing. We've probably purchased close to $300 million worth of real estate assets, about $100 million of assets under management overall with people's money that has been put through the platform itself.
Okay, fantastic. And you've gotten a lot of press and recognition. And I was really interested with this message. I really appreciate the messaging that you have on your website. You're really kind of taking that, we're the everyman, every person's, we're making this accessible for you. You said you dropped down to $500. How did you get to developing this brand and sort of this unique value proposition in terms of the way you communicate it?
Yeah, I mean, I think this goes almost back to childhood. As I grew up and I was kind of a working middle class family and seeing my parents kind of just go live month to month, day to day, and they never had these opportunities. So I think that's really kind of where the seed started. And then with my journey, my personal journey in life and ending up around at an early age around people who knew how to raise capital and syndicate deals, I started learning that in probably 24, 23, 24. I got exposed to that at a very early age. I got fortunate. And ever since I was like, okay, this is what I'm meant to do. And then all of a sudden doing that for about this is my age, about 20 years. And then all of a sudden seeing an opportunity where it's like, man, I could really leverage this through the Jobs Act. I had this aha moment. I had this like the light bulb went on, this shining light. Oh, this is what I could do. I could do this and I could represent everyone. And I just don't have to represent the high net worth individuals anymore, the ultra high net worths and institutions anymore. So I was kind of sold, and that's when the passion started pouring out. It's like, I got to do this. And I just kind of rolled up my sleeves and started getting to work.
Again, this highlights what great founders do is they take their domain expertise, they see a problem, an unmet need, they look at the marketplace and say, oh, there's a gap here. I can, provide a solution. That's what you did. Again, this just pointing out, I love the copy. And this is a huge market that you're going after, not the 1% elite, the 99% is what you're doing. So tell me, how did you get started? Like, did you build it yourself? Did you code in a garage? Like, you hire someone? Like, give me the story of how you got going in the beginning.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts. You're juggling a lot of different things, and going into it, I'm like, okay, where's the one of the biggest friction points and obstacles? So I was like, okay, really, that to me was the legal and compliance part. That's complicated. I've had experience working with attorneys. They're just reviewing documents and transactions where it cost me close to $50,000 just to do that. So I'm like, oh, geez, this is just going to bury me out of the gates with that side of things. So I went and looked for a co-founder who had a corporate securities background and also had a very heavy background in private equity and commercial real estate. So I was like, okay, this is great. The next step after that was bringing aboard a growth officer to help us out to build the community with that. And then fortunately, I had a little bit of experience of building websites in the past, so that was not too difficult to get going. That's what I thought at that point in time, at least. And that's kind of how we started the team back then. And it was pretty interesting when we first started back in the day. I think that was 2016 is when we started, August 2016.
And bootstrapped, how did you fund it? Seed, investment, angels, what happened?
Yeah, I mean, doing this later in life, you have a little bit more connections, being kind of successful in a previous business. And I had a previous investment firm, so I had some personal capital put in. I had to move on from that business to solely dedicate this. So that took a couple of years really to fully shut down a whole investment firm. You can't just snap your fingers and just say it's over with. But I did have some income to apply the seed capital, the first couple million into the company itself. And then with that, then we opened up through our connections. We were able to raise about $20 million to finance the company. And that took a couple of years to get. And here we are today. Yeah. So I roll that pretty quickly. But that was basically, I was taught how to raise capital from my early 20s. So it was very not as difficult for myself than anyone else. For most other people, it was a natural thing for me to do.
So gotcha. So then let's just have a little sidebar, and I'd love, now that we're on this topic, so for the founders out there who are trying to raise capital, and your experience with it, but it's a brutal experience. What quick advice would you give to all the founders who want to raise capital? They may not be raising $20 million like you did, but what advice would you give?
Not all capital is equal is the first thing. Understand, if you're a marketing person, you're doing personas. I would create personas for your capital and say, hey, what is attached to that capital? You hear horror stories about stuff. So there is a customer service component to that. There is an oversight component to that as well. And you need to partner with the right capital source, because that could really hold you back in so many cases. It's not about just getting capital, but it's the right capital for you. And also, I would even recommend kind of really doing work on yourself, who you are as a person, to understand how you could work with that capital source. Because if it's a clash of personalities, you want to match the right personalities earlier on, so you don't have those clashes later on with growth. Because you will hit obstacles along the way. You will have to have tough conversations with your capital partners. And if you have the right match, those conversations are going to be much easier. If it's the wrong people, it could get a little dicey for yourself.
Great segue. Work on yourself. So not all capital is created equal. Not all founders are the same. Work on yourself. But before, I want to segue into that, because that's something really fascinating that whenever we talk, you bring this up. But let's just talk about the configuration of your team right now. So, what's your core team look like? How many staff? Where are you located? Just give everybody just a general overview of how your company's configured, people-wise.
Yeah, through the pandemic, we pivoted. We're national, so everyone's across the U.S. We have our head of operations is in San Francisco. Our head of marketing is out of L.A. Our head of product is in San Diego. Our lead engineer is in Nashville. We have teams in Europe helping us out. We have our real estate team is we have some people in Texas, some people in Florida. Our head of asset management's in Florida. Wow. We have our head of our division in our backyard here in San Diego. Co-founder is actually lives right down the street from me. That's nice because he's a couple miles away with his family. So we're spread out, and I love it. I love how we're kind of geographically located across the whole country, and starting to go globally with our staff as well. We're about 30 employees right now. We use a ton of contractors because there's so many different parts of the business. So if you add that all together, it's almost like close to 100 people that work for the organization.
Okay. So then working on yourself, you are really big into personal development, mental health, mindset. So let's start there for you. What has been the secret for you? How have you worked on yourself to achieve this level of success?
I've always been a big advocate of personal development. I've always had um, a knack and a thirst for just knowledge and so many different forms of knowledge. And it came back to like the more, it was always balancing it. But as I grew, it's more about myself than it was more about reading and becoming an expert at something. So understand how I am to match my strengths, to match my weaknesses with others. So when I'm looking to match myself, I'm trying to have someone who has got a strength where a weakness is for myself. So it's not, okay, we both have the same strengths, and then, okay, then there's this huge weakness over here. Whether analogy you want to use, someone comes to your flank and it's exposed because you have a weakness over there. So really building that team around my strengths and weaknesses. And the only way to do that is to really understand yourself. And it's not something you could do one time and just kind of close the book on it. It's a constant evolution. And that's what I consider development, is something that you consistently work on. People always say, are you born with it or is it environmental? Well, that's great. I'm like, it's developed. That's my thing. It's leadership. It's developed. You have to constantly apply yourself and learn. Every interaction you have, every conversation you have with a person, with your spouse, with your significant other, is a chance for you to learn from those conversations, those words, to develop yourself better. And I kind of really dove into that. And then I started adding a couple things. Now I can look at my list of this laundry list of all these things I do, but it started with one thing first. It's not like I did all 20, but I started with one and gradually kind of added to that with time. And especially during these last couple of years. And we don't talk about it because it's kind of taboo as like CEOs and leaders to talk about mental health and understanding who we are. And I'm an extrovert, and I'm stuck in a dark office in my house for 2 years working, and that applied a lot of stress to me. And I was like, okay, I couldn't figure out why, but I'm an extrovert. This is what I'm figuring out. And so I have to embrace that side of me. And I read an interesting article, and it said that if you need to spend 20% on what you love on a daily basis, if not, it has a compounding negative effect upon you. And the article goes on to say it's not 21% or 25%, it doesn't get better, but 20%. So you can't do 30, 40, 50, it doesn't make anything get better, but it's 20. But if it goes down from 20 to 19, 19 to 18, there's an exponential impact upon your health, on your mental health. And I found that fascinating. So if you're not at 20 or at 19 or 18 or 17, each one goes up exponentially, the mental stress. And so now, ever since I read the article, I go and I time block my day, we work all the time. So I'm just going to say I work 10 hours a day because I'm always on. So am I spending 2.5 hours a day on doing something I love to do? And I really and then I'm developing a support team around me as well to make sure that is the right, that I'm doing that, and that is in alignment with the goals of my business.
What's an example? Like when you say what I love to do, is that like a hobby or is it related to work? It's something that you love doing at work? How does that work?
Yeah. Well, I would say we a lot of us like to work on our passion, but I think we take that a little deeper. It's like, what are you more a technical person? Do you like to work on code all day? Are you more of a strategy person, like to work on strategy? Do you want to work on sales? Do you want to work on business development? So I love strategy, but what I love more than strategy is I like talking a little bit. I'm an extrovert, so I know if I'm doing, like right now, we're talking. This is part of my 2.5. This is part of my 2.5 hours of my day. So doing business development. Yesterday I went in a coffee meeting in a local tech group, met with them. It was fantastic. I was like, okay, I'm actually meeting people in person at a coffee shop for the first time in like 2 years. It was great. I got out of that just feeling, I didn't even know what we talked about the other day. I just had a great time. It was great on my mental my mental part of me was so I was like, okay, so this is what I need to do. So I understand my role as my role with my company as the CEO. I'm the spokesperson. I love business development. I love getting out there, breaking the ice. I love doing the media, and that's where I'm starting to steer my time to help drive the company.
So I hear what you've done is you've focused on your strengths. You intentionally block out time to do your work in a way that aligns with your strengths. and then you're pretty much outsourcing everything else that you can to a team and then contractors. That's what you've done.
Yeah, yeah. And I got to the point where I can do that. And that was kind of the grinding part of the startup, getting at that level. And really what happened is this, my leadership team is fantastic. And so they allow me to do that. And that's where I go back to understanding yourself and building the right team. And that puts you in a position to excel at what you do.
Okay. So I know I've got founders that are struggling with, they kind of got through that initial stage, and maybe they're past their seed, maybe just completed an A. They're trying to get ready for the B, and now all new levels of headaches in terms of growing that leadership team, staffing, recruiting. What advice would you have? Because you've gone through this, where you were telling me a story how you pretty much reset your entire leadership team. So walk us through, what advice would you give to those types of founders trying to build that leadership team?
Yeah, I would again start with yourself, what you need, and kind of you got to develop. And I heard this in a podcast, and you got to develop the fact is anytime you face a problem, it's not really a problem; it's par for the course. So you want to make sure that you're developing that mental muscle. So the quicker you do that and understand that you're always going to face obstacles, and don't try to get triggered by it, and developing that muscle when a problem arises, you're not getting stressed out, and you're automatically, your mind's going, how do I solve this? And that's kind of, I believe that's the key to success, is how quickly you could get to that level with yourself internally. This is not, okay, how do I solve this? And just kind of lock on that and take care of that. So that's the biggest piece of advice is kind of, okay, understanding these aren't problems, because there's always going to be stuff thrown at you. No matter what, it's going to be thrown at you all the time. And the way I look at it, and this is something that I have to thank my wife on, because back in the day, she was an entrepreneur, and she worked with what's his name, the Rich Dad Poor Dad guy.
Kiyosaki.
Robert.
Yeah.
Yeah, she did some public speaking with them, and she introduced me to his people director. And so I'm like, of course, I'm a student of like, okay, I got to meet his people director. So I called her up and we had a conversation, and she recommended to me that treat everything like a game. And I was like, that's interesting.
That is
and everything's
interesting.
a game within the game. And so when I started to do that, is, oh, this is fun. So everything I do is kind of a game, even though it's very serious, but mentally, to allow that stress not to be there, have that kind of excitement of playing in a game. And I felt, since I have kind of applied that, it's been easier for myself.
Okay, now you have me curious. So let's use your leadership team. You're building a leadership team. How would you gamify that? Like, what's going through your mind?
Well, some things I'll say, some things I won't say. So like it's like there's games within games. So it's like people have different personalities, and when you're talking in a group, it's different than talking people one-on-one. So you kind of have to adapt yourself to that situation with that person's how they receive and take information. So that's important to understand that. So then when I'm talking to someone, I have a game for each person I'm talking to in my head, or some acronym on there. So in case if someone's like okay, if you're talking to a person, and for instance, let's say, okay, he's a know-it-all, and so I have Kia in my head, know-it-all, KIA. So I'm like, okay, I go into this person, they got to be right. So how do I kind of, manage that situation? Or this other person loves the energy. And so, okay, I go into that meeting bringing more energy than anything else, loves the passion. And that really turns them on, makes them excited about the business. So I make sure to be energetic with that. So it's kind of like adapting myself to certain people and doing things that way. And the other thing is really important, I believe, in this environment when you're working and as the founder, and if you're the CEO or a leader, you have to be kind of on point more now than ever, because you're not talking to people as frequently. And so your words carry a lot more weight. And so I find myself preparing a lot more when I'm talking to people than I ever have in my life. Whether I'm journaling or practicing, I'm always kind of being thoughtful of what I'm saying, because that first impression, it could stick. What you might have just, it might be real quick, it was in passing, but you might not see that person for 2 months because, it's an associate or a vendor or something. So you kind of have to be aware of what comes out of your mouth and how you say it. So, that's one thing I think's changed a lot as leaders. We have to be very, very more focused on ourselves a lot more and what we say, power of our words.
Okay. So then tell me, what for you is the distinction because you use the word leadership a lot.
Yeah.
What's the difference between leadership and management for you?
Well, man, there's a lot of different things. It's your management style. So that's tough. I've seen for me, I've studied leadership my entire career, and what type of leader do I want to be at the end of the day? Where's my strengths? Where are my weaknesses? I don't want to be a micromanager. So I want to be more, I build the best team. I'm delegating them to get that work done. I trust them. I'm here to empower them and support them. I'm their biggest cheerleader, and I'm their support system to drive their results and their goals. And so I want them to call me, them to Slack me, not all the time. Slack's another thing. and I really have my one-on-ones with my leadership once a week, so they could we could have those conversations that they need to have and develop that environment where everyone feels safe to have those conversations. So they're not tough conversations, they're just conversations. So you create that safety with the leadership team. And then I kind of developed our leadership team as more Arthurian, like the Knights of the Round Table. Is I don't go and say, we're going to do this. I go into it and I want 100% agreement of our team before we do kind of any initiatives, that we all agree to do it. And we could still disagree, but we all support that decision made in that leadership meeting. And since we've done that, I've seen our growth kind of skyrocket.
Wow. So there was a switch that happened. Like, it's situational. It's not always going to be one style. I can imagine at different times during the stages of growth of your business, you've resorted to different leadership styles situationally.
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic, I had a staff, I had a large office, and all of a sudden it hits, and you go, okay, what are we going to do? It's unprecedented times. There's no book to read. There's no one to reach out to tell you how to do it. Everyone has a theory, but have you actually done that? No, we have not done this. Do we have grandparents or great grandparents who lived in 1918 during the Spanish flu? I don't know, but I don't know if they remember anything really, if you do. So it's really hard to get any kind of data on how to deal with this, with a pandemic or endemic, whatever it is right now. And so we're all reaching for, like, how do we do this? And for each of us, we have to find our own way through that. And for myself, I looked at that and not saying anything was done right or wrong, but some of the things that were done, I looked at that and, like, I don't know if I had the right team in place to get through it. And so one of the things I did was I understood in my gut that there's a change happening. There, you have to listen. And I'm really listening to the workforce and saying, yeah, people don't want to be back in the office. And today, people are still complaining. Even yesterday, someone's talking to me, hey, I can't wait for people to be back in the office. And I'm like, oh my God, are you adapting to the world? It's because I was like, why don't you surround yourself with people who can excel working from home? Why don't you bring in managers and leaders who have been successful working with people remotely? Because there are people out there, because there are firms who are set up remotely. There are global firms and teams in the US that work with global employees. There is talent out there to do it, and just hire them in your business. And there is a way out of that. And so it was just interesting going through that and kind of pivoting a little, looking at my team, saying, okay, this is what I see that I need to change, and understanding how I am and what I want at the end of the day. Because some of the traditional roles still want to be in the office, and that's usually the back office, administrative stuff, the legacy traditional businesses that haven't changed. They're a little resistant. We all know a little bit, but they're changing. It's changing. And so those were the ones always in the room. They're one of the ones who want people in the office. And understanding who we are, we're tech, marketing, product, all aboard more than anything else. And that whole genre wants to be remote. And so we had to embrace that. And I had to bring in people who had more experience running teams like that. And once I did, we started to we do a lot of employee scores, employee grades, and we started kind of getting really good scores across the board for employees.
All right. So adaptive leadership, that's the theme. Takes a tremendous amount of courage to do that, for sure. Tactically speaking, just curious, how did you go get your team? Were you using recruiters, headhunters? How did you actually get a hold of these people?
That's a separate podcast if you want to talk about recruiters. so that's a long conversation. So since luckily I'm an extrovert and I like to network,
Gotcha.
And one of the things I had to improve on was just not going and initially meeting someone, but really kind of staying in touch with them. Not staying in touch with like a couple people, but just stay in touch with the people who I just got along with. They're good people. And I stayed in touch with a person who actually helped me create the name in 2014. So I kind of came with the idea in 14, but didn't kind of start the business end of 16. And I saw their career blossomed, and there we go. That became my CMO, my current CMO, just being that, and he is all remote. And then he had a really great friend who just had to exit, and I met him, and that became my COO. So right there, kind of opening that up. Then one of my head of another division was someone locally that I've known for 10 years and working for a family office that was winding down, was able to recruit that person. The other one, I believe, just came naturally through an ad or had a product. So a little bit of everything I'm doing it, but really being out there. I mean, I found most of the leadership team I found by building relationships over the years, being in touch with people, watching their careers too. So I'm older, so I've seen people 10, 20 years ago, where they start and where they at today, just kind of just staying connected to them. And I think that's the thing. I haven't really articulated this, but that's one, and I'm not sure I could, is that I'm always looking to hire talent, and I'm always out there. I'm always kind of, sometimes I'm just in network groups just to see, okay, maybe someone here I could hire one day for or partner with on something. And that's something I've always kind of proactively done for the last 20 years.
So the playbook is always be hiring, always network, and keep track, because like when you hire, just like you said, when you hire one person, they're attached to a network. And if you treat them well, they're going to refer other people to you, etc. And so even though you're using all these tactics, and I'm sure we could have a long conversation about recruiters and headhunters, but you're using all the different tactics, but you're putting yourself into the network, like you're getting yourself out there, which is great. What qualities are you looking for? Because I know a lot of founders, they're having a hard time because they'll hire based on technical skills. And if someone's got the resume with technical skills, they're probably either expensive, out of reach, they're being recruited like crazy. So how do you look at the intangibles to say that they're going to fit into my leadership team?
So now you got me thinking. I haven't employed this, but I would say there's 3 steps. One is start with yourself, right? To give your own SWOT analysis, your own strengths and weaknesses to match that. And then the next thing is you got to if you're hiring a generalist or a specific skill, you got to make sure, they have that, the skill you're assessing for that role. And I think that's a big thing. And then the last thing is to matching the value system. And there's, your core values. If you create core values, always a catchword if you're creating core values. So if you just need to create something there and have a checkbox, and they need to match. If you have core values, if you have 6 or 5 or 3, they got to match 100% that, or that's a no-brainer. Don't try to circumvent that, because that'll come back to haunt you. So, look at yourself. Is the right match? Do they have the skill set for the position? Do they have a track record doing that? I don't believe a startup has a chance to really, it's better to hire from production, not potential in some cases, because if your kind of potential is great, you're taking a gamble on that person, and you want to limit the amount of risk as much as possible. So if you had someone with a track record, that's going to propel your business, that's more certain for you and a higher chance of success. You want to kind of check all those boxes. You got me thinking. There's maybe some AI on this we could create with what we're talking about, and data on that stuff. And then again, and there's other books, and they say it. You get it, want it. Do they have the capacity to do it? The want it is the core values. Are they passionate about it and stuff? So yeah, it's an art form, but there's a science behind it, and you got to not compromise. You got to go. And I always look at it, if you're proactive with things and not just passive with things. Like if passive would be just stick a job ad on LinkedIn or something and just wait to come with you, but try everything. Do that box. You need to click that box, of course, but do it all. Be proactive to put yourself in the best situation, the best chance of success by doing everything, so you could select the best people, because you're moving fast, and the last thing you could do is wait 6 months to a year to hire someone. So gotcha. You just gotta, so it's going to be tough. It's not the easiest thing to do, but if you put yourself out there, you should be able to limit the risk of hiring someone wrongly.
Okay. I like the fact that you do acknowledge that it's an art, but then there's also a science. So you're willing to be flexible, but there are frameworks, that
Yeah.
proven frameworks that you can access. So you kind of have a system and a process in mind. I got two remaining questions for you, and we can just gloss. I could talk to you all day. Like, I'm sure we could
Yeah.
fill like five of these, five of these episodes. But first, you talk about blitz scaling. So for the founders out there that are in that growth stage, who are trying to scale, not just we're generating revenue, but we got to hit some goals. Explain from your words, blitz scaling, how it's worked for you. How's it going?
Well, what we did is we just 3 months before the pandemic, we decided, I read the book, and then I'm like, okay, I want to do this. Let's just raise some money and just throw it into marketing to grow the community. And I don't even care. I'm not going to ask you about CAC or LTV. Let's just throw it out there, get the data, and then optimize it. It's a giant leap of faith. And then in the book even says it's like assembling a plane as it's going down from 30,000 feet. And I'm just like, they are 100% accurate with that, because it causes such a mess when you're doing stuff like that. But I vocalized that to the team. Hey, this is what we're going to do. So we took our marketing budget and 5x'd it. And all of a sudden the pandemic hit, and everyone looks at me and I'm like, yeah, we made this decision. We're not going to, we're going ahead with this. I didn't say that. So, there's pros and cons, but for us, we were able to create a community and gather a lot of data on them to understand their behaviors, and now we're optimizing things. So that choice I felt was crucial to our success today, just kind of going for it. And that to me, for myself, was I've lived through a couple downturns, and I remember how the people came out of those downturns and were super successful. And it's kind of, there's an acronym out there, or a cone out there, is danger and opportunity. When people are running, that's when you want to when they're running away, you want to run towards it. Stock market, when everyone's kind of selling, maybe you want to be buying. It's the same kind of concept there. I was like, okay, there's chaos going on, and I kind of like chaos. And and there's going to be a lot of opportunity out there. Try to kind of be calm as much as you can. It was kind of nuts, and you can benefit from these type of situations. And
But I've seen blitz scaling. Obviously, Reid Hoffman's playbook on blitz scaling. I've seen it work wonders, but I've also seen it take a toll on the culture of the organization. How did you manage that sudden that shift that had to occur?
Yeah, well, that was a byproduct for us. It was, we had issues. Of course, it's culture. You have customer service, or I would say the biggest two things: culture and customer service. You're hiring fast.
Yeah.
You can't keep up with the customer service stuff because because you don't really have systems and processes in place that much, because those are on hold, really. You don't want to put your resources into that. So yeah, it was a little chaotic with things going on. But it's good. I think it's actually a healthy thing, because the blitz scaling in a startup are kind of the same type of, how do I say, feeling or energy there.
Sure.
It's like, if you can handle that, then yeah, you should be. When people dream about working at a startup, to me, it's like blitz scaling. It's like spending money and trying to optimize it and moving fast and moving quickly. And it's good to kind of shake the people out of the organization who are really, maybe they were in love with the idea, but
Gotcha.
not really what it actually is. So I feel like it was a kind of healthy thing to do. Um, and that matches that was at least my personality. And going back, I wish I had the time to do more testing through HR. And I wish I had an HR director. Like, we have an HR director now, 6 months ago, people director, but we didn't have one before we started blitz scaling. And I'm not sure if you have the resources to do that, but that would be one person I would go back and say, hey, if I could have a full-time people director, that would be great. That would kind of minimize some of that.
I think you made the distinction. There's a difference between HR, which is all about compliance and everything like that, and a people director who cares about people, like human capital management and development. So I totally agree with that advice. So then, okay, so here's the last question. So there's going to be founders watching this, and your story is inspiring, and they're going to aspire to it. If you had to give one piece of advice, where do you start? Because you talked about, you do these 20 things, but you started with one. What advice would you give to that founder out there at any stage going, man, I really want to go down that route? You talk about get to know yourself, but how? Like tactically, let's make it tangible for people. What do they do?
You just said it. I have an acronym: do, learn, grow.
Do, learn,
And
grow.
you got to
Okay.
get out of your head and start doing things, and then understand that there's not failing or succeeding. What happens is that's an experience, that's learning, and that's where the growth comes in and says, okay, I did this, what can I learn from that, and how can I grow from that not to do that again? And we tend to stay in our heads and not take action, and that's a choice in itself, but we have to we have to just do things and learn from them. I find that's the biggest thing is people kind of hesitate a little too much, procrastinate a little too much, is kind of just do things. Have confidence in yourself. You've taken this first step, and since you've taken that first step, take the next steps. And that's always understand this is a journey. There's a process to it. Enjoy that process. That's why we're doing it. We like the chaos. We like the uncertainty. And you have to ask yourself those questions before you start. It's like you have to be comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Being comfortable with the uncomfortable. All right. So a lot of founders get into this mode where they kind of go into analysis paralysis. They got to get it right. I talk to founders all the time who are in this perpetual cycle of customer discovery, analyze the competition, doing interviews before they even try to build something. So you're saying, just do it. Just get out there. Similar to you just pulled the trigger on Blitz Scaling. We're not going to change. Or once you made a decision, you had the conviction behind it. You're telling people, get out of your head, stop hesitating, and just do it. After, how do you learn from it?
Yeah. So you learned, and then you take that data, don't make that same mistake twice, and do that again. And okay, and you do it enough times, there's going to be positive trends. And if you don't have positive trends and you don't figure it out in time, well, businesses fail at the end of the day. Maybe it wasn't the correct thing to do, but you have to kind of get that, you have to accelerate that learning. You have to accelerate that growth. So to me, it's like the learning equals the growth. And so you have to have that kind of environment, that culture built into your organization.
So what systems do you have around you? So you've done something. Do you have like advisors, a council, a peer group? Your wife, you mentioned your wife. Walk me through, how do you go through the process of learning? Because sometimes if you're just in your own head, like you're not really going to learn anything because you can't step back from it. What have you done to really learn?
I've been a student my entire life of learning. So that's kind of innate to me. It's a strength of mine. So it's been very easy for me to do it. I probably it's too much of strength. It's a weakness because, oh, that's a great article, I got to read this. Or I buy like 5 books a week and they're all stacking up that's something to me. I embrace that. You got to figure out what's worked for yourself. Advisors are good, but they could also hold you back. So you might get advisors for a certain point in time of who you are, but you got to understand yourself. They'll give you, you're not going to sit there and have like 10 hours of conversations with an advisor. So they really understand every piece of your business and what's inside your head. They'll give you advice, but you got to take it for a grain of salt for what it's worth. It's great to learn from other people's experiences. Like the group startups.com is a tremendous group of people. It's a great community to learn. I believe finding groups like that are very engaged. It's a very engaged community. It's one of the more engaged communities I'm part of. It is really allows you the opportunity to learn from people who've done it before and share stories. And also allow yourself to be vulnerable, ask questions, go out with people, ask them, hey, Slack them or email them or call them or whatever to do the side conversations. That's where a lot of my learning has come from, is talking to people. Be authentic as well. And people will share, and they'll share their stories, and a lot comes from that.
I could have said it better myself. All right. So one last question, parting thoughts. What's next for you? Vision, what's on your heart from here to the next 5 years, 10 years? What are you thinking?
I'm going big with this sucker. So, I mean, I am very looking forward to 2022. It's a great start for us, and really kind of growing our community and introducing more wealth building products to everybody. We're up against the institutions and everybody else in the world. I love taking them on head on, and I'm passionate about. So I see myself just offering a variety of products that aren't offered to the everyday investor, and really launching that in the next 2 to 3 years.
World domination. That's what I'm hearing. You got world domination on your mind.
Well, as long as I build something, it's not about if someone comes along the way who could do a better job than me. The vision to me is more important than myself here. I don't want to end up being one of those people who stay on in perpetuity with the company. I want to do what's in best interest of the company. So I'm trying to put my ego aside for the vision, and just do what's in best interest of the company itself.
That's fantastic. Well, Craig, a lot of us here at startups.com and founder groups, we've become fans. So we talk about you quite a bit. So I can't express my gratitude enough for the contributions that you made, conversations that we've had, and just coming on here and being open and transparent with what you're doing. Let me leave you with the final thoughts. What are your parting words for everybody who might be listening to this?
The one thing I said when I started out, people said, I can't believe you're doing that. It's never going to work. Follow your passion. Just go for it. You only got one life to live. Just might as well go for it. Just listen to yourself.
Fantastic. Thanks, Craig.
Great. Thanks, Ed. Appreciate it.